Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BS Your Way Through Life show. So happy to have all of you here. Today, I decided that we needed to do a subject that is, it's a little hard to, I can't even find my words here, but I think it's important that we talk about how to deal with criticism, constructive criticism that is disguised as insults, and how to handle them lovingly or how to deal with them lovely or respond lovingly, whatever. So I think this is something that needs to be talked about because within our marriages or relationships or any relationship you're in, whether you're with a parent or you have a child or whatever, we all get some kind of criticism in our lives. And sometimes we feel like we get it a lot. And especially within our marriages, which we're going to focus on today, but you can apply this to any relationship that you currently have. So let's give an example. Let's say you're loading the dishwasher and your spouse comes up and says you're loading it wrong. You're making it so you can't fit very many dishes in there. And you're like, excuse me, right? So obviously, you're thinking, who are you to tell me how to load the dishwasher? Not your place, right? Okay, granted. But, but here's the major question of the day is, do we need to make an argument out of it? Or make it into where it, rubs us the wrong way and now we're upset, you know what I mean? And then this whole thing starts and it's unnecessary, first of all. So there's a few responses here you could do with that. One, you could just be like, okay, whatever. And then you could, load the dishwasher the way that they said or the way that they recommended or whatever it was. Or you could start an argument and you could be like, well, how dare you? Not your place. Well, if you want to load it that way, then you load the dishwasher, right? There's a so or you could do the 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 growth way. The what would we call it? The self-growth slash kind way or whatever. You could be like, okay, granted, the way I'm loading this, I'm not that great at it. I'm not getting I have to wash half the dishes by hand because of how I loaded the dishwasher. This is my this is me, by the way. In the past, I used to load it to where I literally had to wash almost half the dishes because I just sucked at loading the dishwasher. And so, okay, so you can admit, yeah, okay, I suck at this, and that's okay, right? And yeah, I could use some improvement. And then maybe they even start showing you how to load it. Like, look, if you load it like this, it's so much better. Instead of being irritated, but mind you, irritation will be the first emotion that's going to come up on you. And that's okay because irritation is there to help you. It's there to protect you because it's like, hey, I'm protecting you. But you can tell irritation, it's okay. Chill, chill. We're good. We're good. We're learning right now. We're having a little self-growth. We're good. Right. And you listen and you apply. And then before you know it, you're loading the dishwasher like a boss. And you are hardly having to wash any dishes. And you have saved yourself so much time, right? As opposed to the other options, which are just follow their instructions and be bitter about it or be upset or just like whatever, be passive aggressive, ignore them and just keep doing it and just not say anything. Or you start an argument with them, right? None of those sound like a path you want to go down. So let's take the self-growth path. And another example that we could give is I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've already explained this scenario in my previous podcast, but I think it's worth repeating. it's absolutely worth repeating. And so we're going to repeat it here. So you've heard this before, or you're going to hear it again. So this is a true story. So when my husband and I first got married, so I'm one of those like radio singers, shower singers, random like la 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 singers, right? I know I'm not that good. I know I struggle to be on key. I know all these things. And so I get married to my husband, who is a singer songwriter, and his family is very musical. They're all so talented. They're also beautiful singers, right? So that's the family he grew up in, not the family I grew up in. We're all dabble in music, right? We're all the shower singers or the radio singers while you're driving in your car and belting out that song that you love, you know? Well, I start singing in with the radio when my husband and I are driving in the car, and he would be like in the middle of my, feeling the moment and the passion and the fun of the song, and all of a sudden my husband would be like, you're too high. Oh, you're off key there. Oh, you're low. And I was so irritated, like so irritated. But I didn't believe in starting stupid petty arguments over stupid things. So I'd be like, okay. And so inside I'd be like just nails on a chalkboard. You're ruining, you're popping my bubble, my fun, whatever, with your constructive criticism. And I'm like, okay. And he's just like, it's here. And then he would do the note and like match my note. And I was feeling so irritated. I'm like, I don't want to do this now. I'm feeling, the rebellion is coming out in me full force. But I'm like, okay, swallow my pride. And so I'd like try to match the note or hit the note. He's like, yeah, right there, right there. And he's just like, okay. And then it would do that for every song I sang. I would even be making up a song. I'd be doing the dishes and randomly just singing a random song about like mustard or something, right? He's just like, you're a little pitchy there, you're a little off key. I'm like, I'm making up the song. How do you even know that I'm off key? It's a made up song. What if that's the key I want? That's what I'm thinking inside my head. I'm like, what? Because my husband is so good with music and he can hear it. And like, when you play the piano and you're like doing all these keys, and some keys that you sing or that you punch together don't sound good together. They sound off and awful, right? You're dinking around on the piano. It's just like, it's just no. Okay. That is what my husband could pick up on. Even when I was making up a song, you could hear that, oh, that sounds like a terrible combination in that note thing you did. Right. So I'm like, okay. And then he would say, if you sing it here, it's better. And he would just like coach me on these silly random songs that I was making up. And I'm like, okay. And at the very beginning, I was so irritated, right? And I remember when we had our first kid, I would sing to my son Riley when he was a baby, because it's what mamas do, sing their babies to sleep. And he would cry. He would usually cry when I sang, and I'm like, okay, that's sad. And anyway, and then I got my second kid, and mind you, throughout these entire years, every song I ever sang, when my husband was present, he would coach me. He would like, no, here, no, sing it like this. No, down here, you're too high, you're too low. Like he would inch me to the right note. And then our second kid came along, and I would sing to him, and he didn't cry when I sang, but it certainly didn't. He just didn't care. It didn't do anything for him. And then my third kid came along, and she was soothed by my singing, and I was just like, okay. And I could tell that I was getting so much better. Like I always wanted to be a really good singer when I was a kid, but a lot of people tell me like, yeah, you don't sound that great, and I'm just like, oh. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just sing for fun and sing for me and not care about being good or whatever. So but then I started, every time my husband would start to correct me, I'd bite my pride and I would just follow his directions. And so by the time my third kid came around, right? And at this point, we're married for I'll have to think about this, 6 years, 5 years, whatever. And I was singing to her. I was like, oh, you know what? soothing her. I was like, I'm getting better at this. I used my kids as like a marker of like how good I was doing, how their response was. Maybe that's not a good idea, but this is what I did. And I just started to realize how good I was getting. And then my fourth kid came along and I started singing to her, and she fell asleep to my singing every time. I was like, oh, this is magical. I've become amazing. And then I suddenly felt this wash of appreciation for my husband and for myself. And I was proud of myself for not being bitter or starting an argument or just like, you know what, leave me alone. Don't tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm just having fun. Instead of doing that, I applied because he knew what he was talking about, right? I mean, he's a singer songwriter. He knew what he was talking about. So because I bit my pride and I took the constructive criticism and I made the better changes, I became a good singer. I started getting compliments in church when people would sit behind me, like, "Oh my gosh, you have a gorgeous voice." And I'm like, "A childhood dream is coming true," because I bit my pride and because I accepted this constructive criticism and I made the necessary changes to make it better. And then when my fifth child came along, it was so cute. I sang to him for he was like, I want to say 3 months old or something. Anyway, I sang to him and he smiled so big. His smile was so genuine. It's like, oh, he loved it. And I was just like, oh, I just got to smile. And then I joked with my husband because we at our fifth kid, we were like, we're done, right? We're not gonna have any more kids. And I'm just like, hey, Fielding, we need to have just one more kid so I can get an applause. Anyway, so like it was so cute. And I thanked my husband. I think it was after our fourth kid came along, and I'm just like, hey, I just put a child to sleep by singing to them. And I'm like, this is because of you. Thank you for teaching me how to be a better singer. And he was, and it made him feel so good. He's like, yeah, I blessed my wife, and my wife is grateful. Instead of think about the road that I the second option road that I could have taken, right? So I could have chosen the bitter, upset road, the argument, leave me alone road, and could have just kept torturing people with my singing, right? Not saying that everybody has to be a good singer or whatever to enjoy singing. You can totally sing, whether you sing good or not, it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying for this particular scenario, that I could have taken that path where I didn't have any improvements and I just kept going along the way that I was going. And that we wouldn't have had the moment of my husband feeling so good about helping me and me feeling so good about, how like me being able to sing. And now I've like done performances, like minor things, not anything like, oh, you so I've sang in, I got asked to sing, a special musical number at church, and I've been in the choir, and there's just been different opportunities where I've been able to sing, and my husband and I are able to sing together, and we enjoy it. We enjoy it so much. We enjoy music together. And then not only that, the woman who thought she could never play any musical instrument in her life, let alone write a song, I now can play the ukulele, which is because like my hands are small, can't do the guitar, and piano is just too much patience and I don't have it. So I am playing a musical instrument, which I didn't think it was possible. And I wrote my own song. And I'm so proud of myself. Like I have this book that I've had for years that I have different songs. And even before I got married, I had this dream of like, I'd write down words to songs because they would come to my head. But I'm like, but I didn't understand, I understood basic notes and that was it. But I didn't understand how you could write a song. So I had these words hoping that one day music could be put to them. And now I started to put music to them. And it's amazing. It's because I decided not to take the pride road. I decided to take the meek and the self-growth road, right? And it feels so good because sometimes we just need to get over ourselves. It's okay that we're not good at stuff. It's okay that we need that we need to be to improve. It's okay to not be perfect, and it's okay to get criticism. And you know what? There is a difference too between good criticism, constructive criticism, and destructive criticism. So in this scenario, if my husband would have come to me and said, you suck, you really need some lessons, right? That is destructive criticism. He is knocking me down and making me feel bad, right? That's not constructive, right? And but that's not what he gave me. Instead, he's like, you're too high, you're too low, right? It felt like insulting, right? Because you're like, oh, you don't think I'm perfect? You don't think I'm good at this? No, they don't. And that's okay. It doesn't make them a bad person. It just makes them a person who sees where improvement can be improved and is letting you know, right? Like when you have something in your teeth, how often you're going around, you're smiling, you're feeling great about yourself, and then later you look in the mirror and you realize that you've got like something in your teeth. Or women, they might have like makeup marks on their teeth and like, oh, what did, and then you turn to your best friend and you're like, why didn't you tell me? Because they didn't want to, break down your confidence. But it would have helped you so much if they would have said, hey, you cut something in your teeth right there. And you're like, oh gosh, thank you for telling me. Oh, that's good. That way you're not embarrassing yourself in front of a tons of people, especially if you're at a party or a dance or somewhere. If you're trying to impress a dude or something, or impress someone, you're not looking like a fool. Like, I'm so confident. I've got this broccoli in my teeth. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, So consider your spouse, your best friend, and they're telling you, hey, this needs some help. Your voice needs help, love, right? And sometimes it isn't there. It isn't necessary, right? So like how you wrap the cord around the vacuum, not a big deal, right? There's not really some self-growth that is there. Just wrap the cord around the vacuum. It doesn't matter exactly which way. Those things aren't a big deal. But we still don't need to make an argument over it or get upset about it. You just don't. So in the case of small things like that, like why do you wrap the vacuum cord this way? It makes more sense to go this way and be like, it's the way I like it, right? And you could wrap it the way that they want it, but that's just a preference thing at that point, right? But you still don't have to make an argument out of it. I'm like, well, you wrap it the way you like. I'm gonna wrap it the way I like. But if it is damaging the vacuum, if you're doing something that is damaging the vacuum, and they're letting you know, hey, this actually kind of ruins the construction of the vacuum, then yeah, it's worth making the change. So make the change. Other cases are like, let's say there's cords, right? So let's say you have this long extension cord because you did something with it, and you and your husband both use that cord. Let's say that he had a project he did and he wrapped it up all nice and had it all set away so nicely. And then later you get it out, you use it, you unravel this long cord, and then you're like, I'm too busy. And you just kind of bunch it back up and then set it in a corner. And then later, when your husband goes to use it, he takes that cord to go use it. And now it's all knotted. He has to untangle it. And he's spending like 10 minutes just unraveling this stupid cord. That's frustrating, right? And he's probably going to come to you and say, who used this cord and why was it put away like this? Why can't you just roll it up and put it away? Because they're frustrated because they just dealt with your mess. You made it so that they had more work to do, right? You both use that cord. It would be a helpful thing, and also showing your spouse or your wife or your husband or whichever, that you respect them and their time by taking the time to round that cord back up. Maybe you didn't have time, right? Maybe, especially as a mom, you have kids, you get called away and you forgot, and you're like, obviously you hope for understanding from them if that occurs, but on the same breath, hopefully you understand their frustration. They have their own agendas too and their own things going on, and they don't want to waste time wrapping up that cord. So if they come to you with that kind of criticism, just like, I'm so sorry, I got called away by a kid. Next time I'll try to remember, not forget, and I'll get the core, I'll wrap it up, whatever. Or I'll have a kid help me do it, or put someone onto it to make sure that it's not a mess when you come back to it. So it doesn't give you more work, right? Because think about it, especially if your husband plays the role of going out and being the provider, the last thing they want to deal with is, after being at work and dealing with all the things they have to do at work, coming home and then having to deal with something as simple as that, when they just want to get to the whatever project or thing that they need to do, the last thing they want to do is mess with a windy cord, right? And I say all these examples because these are the little things I don't think that a lot of people really think about, and that these things add up to huge frustrations and becomes huge arguments, which are totally unnecessary. So instead of being like, excuse me, you don't understand how my day was, and I get called away by kids, and you're just going to criticize me on a stupid cord, right? There's none of that that's necessary. Instead, this is the part where we do self-growth. We're like, okay, deep breath. I'm at understanding their side of it. I'm so sorry. The last thing you wanted to deal with when you came home after having a hard day at work is to deal with a windy cord. I'm really sorry. Let me help you unwind it or whatever, or let's say already unwound it, then it's just like, next time I will make sure that you do not have a knotted cord to deal with, right? Like having compassion, showing and allowing them to be upset. You need to allow your spouse to have the emotions they have. And sometimes I think it's really hard. For example, my kids, whenever they get upset or start arguing about something, or they start crying over something so silly or whatever, and I would shut them down. I'm like, you know what? Stop. That's enough. I don't want to hear about it or whatever. You know what? Just get over it, type of thing. Because I was so overwhelmed in my own head with my own things that I was dealing with that I couldn't carry their emotions too. And then I was sitting in a business class. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember. I was sitting in a business class and they were talking about dealing with emotions or whatever, or overcoming things, and something, and that emotions were okay. We need to feel them, and it's okay to feel them. If you feel upset, you need to feel upset. And then this person who was teaching the class started talking about, my mother unintentionally made me feel like my emotions were inconvenient and that I shouldn't feel them. And I was like, I think I'm doing that to my kids. And I was just like, holy cow. So as soon as I got off that meeting, I went out to my kids. I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you guys. I'm like, I want to apologize if I have ever made you feel like your feelings weren't valid and that you being upset or angry was not okay. I want to tell you that it is. You are allowed to feel. If you feel upset or anything, you need to feel those. We're supposed to feel those. We got to process them. We got to go through them. And every one of my kids was like, yeah, you do. You make us feel like it's not okay to be upset. It's not okay to. And I was just like, I unintentionally did that. I'm so sorry. I was dealing with my own things. I explained it to them. Open conversation. And ever since that day, my kids come to me and they're like, I feel this way. And I just validate. And there's sometimes where I'm overloaded. I'm like, just, you need it. I'll stop myself. I'm like, okay, I'm doing it again. And I'm like, hey, look, you're okay. You're allowed to feel this way. I just want you to know that I'm teaching you how to overcome it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm not trying to tell you not to feel that way. I'm just teaching you, because that's my mom's job, of how to deal with it, how to overcome it with it. And I'm sorry if I'm not doing it in the best way. I'll work that. I'll get better at it, type of thing. And it helps so much. And I think apply this to your spouses. Sometimes we're overwhelmed with our own emotions that we're like, oh, why do you have to feel sad today? Why do you have to be upset? But they need to. You need to bear. We're supposed to bear one another's burdens. That is what we signed up for when we got married, when we decided to be in a relationship with them. We didn't sign up just to have all happiness with them. No, we signed up for the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And we are tired sometimes. Life gets hard. But it's okay. It's okay. You can take this on. You signed up for it. You can do this. You were built for this. You got this. And sometimes maybe we don't got this and we don't feel like we've got this. And that's okay too. And sometimes, my husband has come home and he's had just the most overwhelming day. And I've had the most overwhelming day. And he starts just like blah. And I start blah. But my overwhelm is too much for his overwhelm. And and then finally it's just, you know what? We just need each other. That's what we need. And we just, maybe a hug. He just needs a hug because you need a hug. I'm like, I'm hugging you. It's like, I don't feel like a hug right now. We're like, I need a hug. And then maybe just those words, he'll hug you. It's just like, okay. Sometimes we just need to step outside of ourselves. So, okay, circling back to my getting better at singing story and constructive criticism versus destructive criticism, right? So if somebody's like physically abusing you or just really talking you down, that is destructive, right? And for all they don't even know that they're being destructive. Maybe they're just irritated. Like, have you ever been irritated with your kids and they're singing at the top of their lungs, but you're like, I cannot stand that loud piercing singing anymore. You're like, could you just stop? Right. And maybe you just kind of pop their happy bubble. And maybe we do that to each other as spouses. They're going along, let's say like there was a day, maybe my husband, he's playing his guitar and he's having a great time. And I'm like, hey, honey, could you turn that down? I've got this going on over here. He's not thinking about, oh, sure, honey, I'll make this quieter for you because you have this going on. Instead, he didn't know that I had that going on. He's just thinking like he's in his zone. And then all of a sudden I come in, and to him, that's me saying, I don't like your music, turn it down, stop, right? That's not what I'm saying, but that's how he's going to take it. And if he were to do the same to me, if I was going along and playing my ukulele, I was like, woohoo, I'm having a good time. And he came to me and he was just like, hey, could you tone it down? I'm trying to work over here. Then to me, that'd be like, oh, he doesn't like my music. And he thinks my music is annoying. And he hates it. But that's not the case at all. He literally just needed quiet for that minute because he was doing something. I had no idea. I just came in with my guitar or my ukulele and I was like, la, 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 right? These stories are true. I'm just saying as examples, right? So how many times do we unintentionally do this to each other, right? Yeah, that is a little destructive, but we didn't know. So sometimes our spouses just don't know. So instead of in those certain circumstances, instead of taking it as though, oh, they hate my music, I'm gonna quit now, I hate everything, I'm a failure, instead of doing that, no, just like, oh, take a deep breath, allow that emotion, that first like, I'm a failure, I'm horrible feelings to come in and be like, and just thank them for coming and just like, oh, I know you're here to protect me because you're guarding me, you're making sure that I'm happy and whatnot. But we're okay here. We're okay here. He just needed a quiet, or she just needed a quiet for a minute. They love our music. They love us. It's not a big deal. It's just this one time thing. When they're done doing their thing, or I'll just go to another room and keep my happy bubble going. We're good. We're good. And just shake it off. Move on. Don't make a deal out of it. Don't put yourself into depression ditch because you're good. They're good. They love you. Don't absorb it. Let the emotion come in, deal with it, thank it, and then move it out as quickly as possible. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that resonates and you're able to like move forward with that. Okay. So, the next thing is so there's that scenario, right? But then what if they come in and they're like literally like, hey, you know what? Like with the dishwasher thing, they come in and it really just feels like they are just insulting you. And this is something that you need to remember. And I've got a podcast on this. It's called Back to Basics. In those moments when you feel like you're being criticized or they are frustrated, they're taking their frustrations out on you. Like there's no way around it. You're being criticized. You're being hounded on and you really actually don't deserve it. It seems out of the blue and unintentional, and you're like, or it just doesn't make sense. You're like, why are you upset at me? And it seems like it doesn't make sense, and it's just coming from nowhere. These are the moments where you need to ask this question. You don't need to start again. This is not a reason to start a fight at all. It's not. Instead, here's what you do. You ask this question as you're being criticized. Is he or she a good person? And do they love me? And do I love them? Right? If they are, because most people are generally very good people and they're just trying to do their best, but they have their flaws, right? My flaw is jumping in and what's the word? I can't think of the word. Jumping in and just barreling in without getting the full story. And it gets me into a lot of trouble. I'm like, that is a huge flaw with me. What's the word my husband says all the time? Is just like, you need to stop being so, oh, what's that stupid word? Oh, people. This is what mother brain is like. Simple words you can't think of, but whatever. Anyway, moving on. I get myself into trouble so much. And other people, their patience might be a thing they struggle with, right? They're not good with patience. Again, we all have our flaws. Maybe someone has like a little bit of an anger issue or something, but they're not a bad person and they're not going around beating people. They just tend to be quicker to anger than others, right? Like me with my kids. I used to be so quick at being so mad, right? But now I've gained some more patience, and I take deep breaths, and I don't get as mad as quickly at them. And I take my time and I try to like judge what's actually worth getting angry at and what's not, right? So, and we've got to remember that. And so with this, it's we've got to remember in those moments when you feel like you're being criticized unfairly and for no reason, these are the times when you want to think, there are they a good person? Now, if they're physically abusive and they're all their language to you, 80% of their language to you is, you know what, you're 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 ugly, you're stupid, and it's just nothing but insults coming out of them. Like you're a horrible mother and you never do anything, you're so lazy, that kind of language, like cruel language. You're just a whatever horrible insults are just coming out all the time. That's not good. That is not good, right? We don't want that. We No physical abuse, right? We don't want, if you're getting physically abused on a regular basis, you need to really rethink not being in that relationship. You need to really rethink your relationship, and you deserve better than that. Always. Nobody deserves to be treated like that ever, right? But in a case of where your spouse is frustrated and they start taking their frustrations out on you, right? That is when you need to ask the question, or you need to remind yourself, hey, they're a good person. They work hard for our family. They love me and I love them. They're just having a moment. So I really recommend, if you're having a hard time deciding between what situation you're in and whether you have a hard time deciding, go listen to it. Go to the podcast after this or right now and go listen to, it's called Back to Basics. Okay. In my BS Your Way Through Life show, go Back to Basics. Go listen to that one. It will give you more insight on that. Okay. So, okay, let's move on. Okay. So again, hopefully some of these little scenarios and these little stories that I've shared with you will really, really help, because I feel like it's so important. It's really hard for me to articulate and break these things down. It is. And for a few years, all these things are in my head, but I don't know how to break it down so that you can really see it, because I know this for years, like things that look like an insult, like I said, constructive criticism disguised as an insult. So it seems like they're insulting you and they're being so rude, right? They had no tact, but some people just don't have tact. I'm sure you've heard me say this before. And if you haven't, well, here you go. Some people just do not have tact. A lot of people do not have natural tact. Well, a good majority of men do not have tact. A lot of men in my life do not have tact. Okay. Women are more naturally blessed with tact because we are born with this nurturing, loving, because that's just how we're made. And so we naturally have more tact. Men are a little more like logical, upfront, and blunt. And when they say something, it's easy to be like, ow, and if you say, well, thanks, and they're like, what? They're confused. They're literally confused because to them, they didn't think that was a big deal. They just said it. That's how they talk, right? So we need to remember that too, which really, really helps. Knowing this stuff really, really helps. It really does. So, but yeah, it's hard for me to articulate and break things down, but it's really important to get down to the nitty gritty and telling stories that help illustrate these things so that when you're presented with it, you're getting criticized, you can have a better mindset and a better understanding, because knowledge is power. And when we understand something better, it literally gives us the power to have more control in situations like this, so that we can take the road that is less yucky, that we can take the self-growth, the loving road, the peace road, right? The meek road, the humble road. We don't need to follow the prideful, icky, arguing. Nobody wants to get married and arguing all the time. Nobody wants that. Nobody. Okay. We don't want it. So let's not take that path. You don't have to take the path. Isn't that beautiful? You don't have to spend one more day taking that path. You can choose today, choose happiness, choose to take that path of peace, serenity, and happiness. Because I tell you what, the further you go down that road, the more beautiful the flowers are. Waterfalls, and the road is starting to get paved with gold. The more you follow that road, the more the road gets beautiful. I promise you that. Promise you that with all my whole heart. Okay. This is real. You start taking the self-growth, love, and peace path, and you're going to be met with nothing but awesomeness. Okay. That doesn't mean that life won't have its challenges and you won't have your challenges in your relationship. Things will happen. People make their choices regardless of what choices you make. But you can feel good knowing that you are choosing a better path. And it gives you so much more wisdom. Wisdom opens up and pours down on you, and you start to see. You start to really see. All right. Well, I need to wrap this up. I've got other meetings to get to today. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you all choose that path of beauty and peace. And I know you can do this. I've got you. You've got this. God's got you. Rock on. Have a great day.